Yes, so let's get started. Kaviraj, you are on.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Lecture Series session today. It's indeed an honor for me to welcome Sri G.K. Pillai sir to this session. Mr. G.K. Pillai is actually an alumnus of Iitm Madras from the 1970 batch, and he's a Kerala cadre IAS officer from the 1972 batch. He was the former Home Secretary of India, and among the prominent posts held are Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister, Commerce Secretary, and Union Home Secretary. He has served as an independent director on a number of firms since his retirement in 2011. He is the chairman of CNS, an NGO that performs boat clinics on the Brahmaputra in Assam, and the chairman of IVCAP Ventures Advisors Private Limited, which is actually an IIT alumni trust-sponsored venture capital fund. He also serves on the board of the Save Life Foundation, an NGO that promotes road safety. He's, as I mentioned, from the batch of 1970, and he was also awarded the Distinguished Alumnus Award by Iitm Madras. Sir, it's an honor for all of us to have this opportunity to listen to you. We look forward to the session. Welcome to the session.
Thank you, Kaviraj. Welcome to all the young participants in this lecture series. Before I begin on pure leadership aspects, I'd just like to make a brief introduction of what really goes into the making of an IAS officer. We all join in our times, it was the age limit was 24. So we got into the service at the age between the age of 21 and 24. Most of us didn't have any work experience. First job, if you want to call it that way. And then we spent 2 years in the IAS Academy, 1 year in the academy and 1 year in the field, where we are taught a variety of subjects. And in the field, you are doing what we call as on-the-job learning as a village officer, as a block development officer, as a tahsildar, and so on. And then you are learning all the time. You are spending 1 week with the PWD, 1 week with the agriculture department, 1 week with the tribal department, and so on, and learning all the time. And this learning process for the IAS officer never ends. It's a continuous learning all through his career. And therefore, at this very young age, one is, if I may say so, young, we are brash, confident, we don't know what the perils are ahead of us, and we think we can do anything. And therefore, many of us get into situations where, with looking back in hindsight, it looks, why did you get into the situation? But you just couldn't help it at that time because you always felt that this is something that you could do. And one thing which, and I will mention again, we have our IAS and IPS and the Forest Service, the All India Service cadres all across India. And that is a resource which we call upon at all times in our career. Because any problem we have in any state, if you are in the federal government or in the state, you can always rely upon to call upon your batchmate for any help, assistance on any issue across state boundaries or on any subject on which you need some help. And then, of course, there is one last or two issues. You make your reputation. Your reputation, in one sense, is your like your shield as you go across, and you make so many mistakes. Your reputation protects you. Of course, with the rider, that you need a little bit of luck. If you don't have luck, then whatever you may do, if you are in the wrong place, the wrong time, you can be the best of officers, you get into trouble. And you can get into very serious trouble also. And that is part of the service itself. And the experiment of putting such young officers into the field and throwing them, in one sense, into the deep water is something which we inherited from the colonial era. And to an extent, I think the fact that in your early 20s, you are taking decisions involving thousands, tens of thousands, money that is run sometimes into thousands of crores, I think gives you a confidence and an experience which is unmatched in any field in India. I have no hesitation in saying that an IAS officer, as he's going up the service, the experience that he gathers is unmatched world over. And I can tell you that because I've talked with people across the world as when I was chief negotiator for India at the WTO, and they are shocked at the level of knowledge that you have on different fields, from agriculture to industries to cooperatives and so on and so forth. So I just thought I'd just mention this in the background, because this leadership style of throwing you into the deep water to take decisions is something that is unique to the Indian administrative service, and therefore to the leadership skills that you develop. I've at least worked in Kerala with both the Left Democratic Front, which is the communist parties, as well as with the UDF, which is the Congress, and so on. You have these coalition parties. I worked with the Congress in the central government, and I worked also when the BJP was in power earlier. In fact, when Mr. Advani was, LK Advani was the Home Minister, I was the Joint Secretary in the Home Ministry at that time. So I've had a variety of services working under different political dispensations. And I can tell you that if your reputation is that you are neutral and you're willing to, you're not a political affiliations open to any one side, you can survive in this field without having any major problems. And therefore, I've been one of the lucky, successful IAS officers, having a tenure which is not less than 3 years at any post, and sometimes 5 years and plus, which is, you must have heard of some specific examples of people who have been posted for 20 and 30, 40 times in their career. I've not had that experience. In fact, most services posts, I've had to leave it on my own, either because of promotion or some other personal reason. This has been, I just thought I'll just mention this in background. I will then just cite a few, you want to put it like case studies, both which will, it's just a handful. I'm just taking 2 or 3 because it's not possible within the time available to tell you what type of cases, issues come up before you, what type of stakeholders are involved. When I was just about 2-3 years into the service, I was posted along with my sub-collector posting. I was posted as special officer for cashew industry. I'm talking about period in 75, 76 during the emergency period. And then in the government, it was a LDF government. C. Achyuta Menon was the chief minister. And there was a big, you might call it the industries minister and the cashew industry were in one sense at loggerheads. And the industries minister he felt that the industry was not paying attention to the workers' wages and so on. And he said there was going to be literally like a state takeover of the entire monopoly procurement of cashew nuts. And as special officer for cashew industry, I was called and told, look, we're doing this, we're issuing an ordinance. It's your job now to take care of the rest. Now, you don't realize it. You are just 3 years into service and you're doing monopoly procurement of cashew in a revenue job where you have no authority to do anything else. It involves that you've got tens of thousands of farmers in 4 or 5 districts. You've got cashew, which is grown right up to Goa. And you are told that you go and procure it, keep it available, stock it, and then supply it to the industry. And you're talking about more than 100,000 tons of raw cashew nuts to be collected. This is the type of challenge that comes to you at that young age, you're 25, and you then have to literally, you have no experience, and you have to work from first principles. And you go, you meet a colleague of yours who is in the marketing federation and say, can you help me out? Because what do you need? Can you tell me? I can go to the government and get a decision on that, but you have the experience of marketing various products in the state. You have marketing people and so on who can go and go to the markets, collect cashew and so on. And you finally, at the end of it, and the industry, obviously they don't like it. They file a case in the High Court, they state the ordinance. You're fighting on one side to get the stay vacated. They go up to the Supreme Court. I went at least 4 times to the Supreme Court in those 2 years to get the stay vacated in the Supreme Court. Government, of course, gives you full backing. And you are learning then the entire industry from scratch. You learn where all cashew is grown. You learn how the prices of cashew, what are them in the market. You learn how you can buy a ton of cashew. And I learned on experience that if you buy a ton of cashew and you put it out for drying, the 1 ton of cashew, it loses weight. So if you don't calculate that also in your pricing, and the drying percentage of cashew varies from Kannur district to Calicut and so on and so forth. And all that process of trying to put this together into a whole system which worked finally is something that we did. And an astounding industries minister who wanted to, he said, you ask me for what you want, I'll get it for you. You want magisterial powers? In fact, I'm the only IAS officer in Kerala, in the history of Kerala, then and till to date, who's been the executive magistrate in all 11 districts of Kerala. Otherwise, you are only an executive magistrate in the district or the sub-district in which you are in charge. I remember, and I just want to give you just an example. When the Home Minister of Kerala said it is not possible to make him an executive magistrate in an area outside his jurisdiction, the file went right up to the Home Minister and came back to the Industries Minister. I saw the file. You know what he wrote in the file? He just wrote, where there's a will, there's a way, and sent it back to the Home Minister. And the Home Minister got the message and said, issue orders, appointing him as magistrate in all the districts of Kerala. That's the type of decision which comes. And I just thought I'll just tell you, it's a question of trust. And then you learning throughout the process. There's a lot of cashew nut, because you don't buy the cashew nut in time. If the private trade buys it, then they will try to smuggle it to cashew factories in Tamil Nadu, outside the state. And the workers in Kerala will get no jobs. So in that period, I must have gone up and down the breadth of Kerala, including all the border areas. And I give you an example of the amount of effort that one goes into by traveling up and down. Every single border area, whether it's with Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, I had gone to that area, every single border village. And I knew every single smuggling route, even where people said there's no road, so there's only a river and nobody can smuggle there, and you can find that actually the smugglers have actually built a nice road, concrete road under the water, just 3 feet below the water, where the trucks will come through and go, and you will not see a sign of it. So you learn that sort of experience which you get, and then you are doing this entire monopoly procurement of cashew, violating in one sense all business principles. Later on, everybody realized this: you can't fight market forces; it's not worth doing monopoly procurement. But this is one aspect that happened, and you take it. And I just thought I'll tell you how, when government wants something to be done, it's possible to do it. All holes are, no holes barred, and that takes place as the decision in the government. Ordinance would be scrapped by the Supreme Court, would strike down an ordinance, the next day another ordinance would be issued. I mean, it was that fast the government would work. It was determined that this scheme will be a success. And you could then see how, so you're learning. I said, all this experience of the cashew industry, including the smuggling routes, going to the Supreme Court, the High Court, you learn about law, you learn how to talk to senior lawyers and solicitor generals and so on. And yet, it's a learning process for me, and it's a learning process in one sense for the government and for the system as such. That's one aspect which I just thought I just mentioned to you. The second issue which I wanted to tell is about, I went 5.5 years, I was posted to the government of India. They wanted at that time young officers as undersecretaries. So in 78, so that's 72, 70, I'm talking about 74. And I posted in the Ministry of Defense. And very soon thereafter, I was posted to the acquisition of aircraft. So I've actually done contract negotiations for the Jaguar, the MiG-23, the MiG-25, the MiG-27, and the Mirage 2000. So by the time that period was over, in terms of, I really became a contract negotiation expert in acquisition of aircraft. But I won't come to that part of it. I'll just come to an issue which I wanted to mention, that when I was, and this is where the luck comes in, and what I earlier mentioned about batchmates, during lunch break as an undersecretary, I was the undersecretary Air Force. My batchmate NP Gupta was the undersecretary Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. So there's a contract for buying aircraft in full condition, direct full aircraft by the Air Force, and there was also a contract by HAL for buying, in parts and then building up over a phased period. They 100% they'll manufacture Jaguar. And just at a lunchtime when we were sharing lunch and so on, I saw a file on his table and I'm seeing, I said, this is particular part of the aircraft, I remembered it because the invoice, we pass I said, the price of this, is, you are getting it for a much cheaper price than we got it in the contract for the Indian Air Force. But I said, can I borrow your file? I took the file, compared it, and I found that our prices were almost something like about 13% higher. I raised the issue with British Aerospace, and I'm just saying, we are still 6 years service, 7 years service. British Aerospace don't reply. They said, this is a contract, you've got a contract, Air Force, we are paying you exactly as per the contract. I said, but you can't do this. So unilaterally, you, as undersecretary, I could take a decision that every time now, next time when all bills of British Aerospace came, I reduced 13% from their parts bill. Initially, British Aerospace didn't notice it because it's running into millions of pounds and so on, a few £1,000 here, nobody. But over 2 years, they suddenly realized that, they should have got so much. They suddenly found that a few £1 million were missing. And then they came and said, where is this? How did you deduct it? And so on and so forth. Of course, I took it up with my bosses and they said, yes, what you have done is correct. It's on, we'll fight it. They wanted more orders, more issues. So they didn't want to make an issue out of it. And this is where the system of what I call leadership in terms of the defense secretary saying, trusting the undersecretary, deputy secretary, 9 years service, and saying that we'll back him on this. And finally, when the issue went at the highest level, they finally said, okay, send a team from the government of India to negotiate with British Aerospace on the revised prices. And 8 years service, I'm negotiating, I'm heading the government of India delegation with somebody in finance and an air commodore in the Indian Air Force to London. British Aerospace, their head office, negotiating with their CFO, the whole production team, etc. And it's not one part. You can't negotiate. So I said, I'm willing to sit down and work out with you. But there were 80,000 spare parts in an aircraft. And if you try to negotiate on each one of them, how much was the difference in the price, try to work out, it's something which, as a business community, the British Aerospace said, look, we can't waste so much of manpower on something which is this. So they said, can you suggest a way out? So I said, let's take just 5 items. Whatever is the average price increase, we'll reduce it. And that will apply across the board. They said, yes. We worked out that, it came. And then they still wouldn't sign the contract till the end because they were not sure that this little deputy secretary to the government of India had the authority to negotiate on behalf of the government of India. They thought, I might negotiate 13% reduction, and then joint secretary will say, no, raise the level, more negotiation, they'll negotiate more, and then defense secretary will raise it and so on. So they went back while we were still in UK. They went back and said, found out, do these young fellows have the right to negotiate on behalf of government of India and sign a contract? And the defense secretary told them, I've sent him. If he signs, I'll accept it. I just wanted to tell you how in the government of India itself, how they look at, if they trust you, and I learned the lesson that somebody at the lowest level, defense secretary is for 35 years service, and I'm 7 years service. Trust. Take the decision and trust him. And so we literally signed the contract at the last minute. And a very interesting aside to the my Air India flight from Heathrow Airport, and this was at the British Aerospace, was somewhere in North England. And I said, my flight is at 5:30. And literally at about 4 o'clock, they still hadn't signed the contract. So I said, I have to catch that flight. Government of India, flight, we can't afford it. He said, don't worry, we'll put you on the flight. They signed the contract. They took us on a special aircraft because British Aerospace flew aircraft and did all the paraphernalia of checking, customs, immigration, etc. done. And we went from one small aircraft, walked up into the Air India flight and flew back. And we were, this whole flight was being held up at Heathrow Airport, and they were wondering who these VIPs were, the whole flight was being held up for. And it's only these three measly junior officers of deputy secretary rank and below in the government of India. But I just said, it's by the way, it's just an aside in terms of, but it is the learning process in that you trust. Once you trust, it doesn't matter what level of seniority or whatever it is, trust your juniors and delegate that powers to them. And this is something which I learned right across when I went across my service. The third, I thought I should tell you, it's not really but it's some of the perils of what we call as service. I'm one of those very rare IAS officers, 3 of us in fact, who were actually censured by a division bench of the Supreme Court, headed by the Chief Justice of India, who then sent the judgment to the Cabinet Secretary saying that, please take disciplinary action against the 3 of us, myself, Christy Fernandez, and the Managing Director of GAIL, Gas Authority of India. The background to this, and I'm mentioning this because it tells you how there's a very famous, those who know MC Mehta versus the Union of India, there's a case on urban transport where finally, the decision that all in urban areas, the buses will ply only on CNG was decision of the Supreme Court was taken. In that case, there was a case where they wanted to file the affidavit. And previous to that day, myself and these 2 officers had gone to the Attorney General's house to finalize the affidavit. So we sat down with the Attorney General, we filed, everything was done, he signed off, and the affidavit was filed in the court that evening and copies served to you. When the case came up, and this is again, the Attorney General was held up in another court, so he was not present. So there was a senior government leader in the court. When the Supreme Court Chief Justice said, what is this affidavit file? This is not it was not according to him, it was not the correct thing, etc. This government leader turned around to us. We were sitting in the front row, in the officials box. And so these are the 3 officers who have filed the affidavit on behalf of Government of India. So he said, stand up. And we all had to stand up. Chief Justice is asking us. And we are in front of the Chief Justice. It's a one-on-one. We are arguing with the Chief Justice, not a lawyer, not anything. We are saying, this is the affidavit, this is our facts. Chief Justice said, no, I am not at all satisfied. In the meantime, the Attorney General walks in. And the Chief Justice, already red in the face, looks at the Attorney General and says, what are these officers are saying? These are the things. I thought you were telling me something else. The Attorney General, to our great surprise, he looked at us, and I think he had not read these before coming. So what he said was, sir, I don't know who these officers are. Some other officers came and met me yesterday and told me something different. And the Supreme Court Chief Justice, I can well understand. He even red in the face. He said, these officers are wasting my time and so on. I censured them, send a copy of them and send out. The only good thing we did was we didn't open our mouth. If we had opened our mouth, the Chief Justice would have sent us to jail. So we just kept quiet, fuming, furious, because we were the same officers who went the previous evening, went back to the office and wrote strong letters to the Cabinet Secretary. That is, my letter was a very strong letter, in which I actually accused the Attorney General of telling a lie in the court. The whole bubble burst. They said, as a director, a small officer, the Attorney General is a constitutional functionary. You cannot write like this about him. I said the facts. And sticking to the facts was what saved me. And today, I mean, if I am before you, is only because I stuck to the facts and stuck to my position and sent off that letter in the heat of my anger at what had happened. The Cabinet Secretary tried a lot of effort he sent officers to get me to change the affidavit. I didn't do it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we actually said that if you initiate disciplinary action against us, we will file a contempt of case against the Attorney General for having uttered a lie in the court. Because we had evidence. Previous evening, we had gone to his house. There were diary records of my driver. There's an entry in the Attorney General's office and so on. Long and short, at the end of it, few weeks later, there was a lot of compromise behind the scenes which took place. And the Chief Justice of India made an open remark in the court. I believe there was a misunderstanding, etc. And the order was quashed. So moto. This is the type of situation that sometimes you face and I'll close with one last incident, any number, is where is the cultural differences that take place when you work in the All India sphere. In Manipur, in Senapati district, there was a murder. And one person from one Naga village murdered somebody in the other Naga village. Of course, everybody knew who had murdered who, and the police had registered an FIR and so on. Normally, under Naga customary law, there's a way in which they settle these issues, and that is a very unique custom they have when the two village chiefs and the council meet, and they settle. The settlement was the son of the accused would come and work with the family of the murdered party for 10 years. One buffalo, Mithun, would be given, and both villages would observe a feast by sacrificing 2 or 3 Mithuns with the buffaloes. That's a settlement. And peace is there between the entire village. Otherwise, if you kill one person from this village, they'll go and kill another person of that village. And then it's a never-ending. So when I was in Senapati, the officers asked, people from the village came and said, we've got a problem. And the problem was the young SP said that he knows who the accused is. He says, I'm going to arrest that fellow. Now, if you arrest that person, he's not able to come and work for 10 years as part of the village settlement. And if he doesn't come and settlement, these people will go and kill somebody in the other village. So you've got a case. So you've got the rule of law under the IPC against the customary law. And what was our whole purpose of law and order is what? All these laws, etc., it's finally meant to serve a particular purpose of maintaining peace among the whole village. So I had to call the SP and tell him, look, I know you've learned IPC, CRPC, etc., and all this, but situation on the ground here in Manipur, among the Naga, this is the customary law. So you just say that you could not trace the accused, not traceable, and close the case. And the matter is settled. So this is something which I took as a decision, which I felt was correct. Though I must say that when I first, later on, 10, 15 years later, I mentioned it to a Chief Justice of India, Mr. Verma, he said, you should have gone behind bars for interfering with the rule of law you should never have given a direction to the young SP to close the case. But I said, that's the decision that you take, and this is based on the customary law, which I believe it maintained peace among the villages, and therefore this is an issue which I take full responsibility as the Joint Secretary Northeast for that. I'll stop here. There are any number of cases in different areas, but I'll stop here and wait for any questions or comments.
Thank you, sir. That's a very wonderful session, and replete with so many insights and anecdotes. And I will now hand it over to our student coordinators, Anushree, to kind of coordinate the Q&A session. Anushree, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful session. I am Anushree, and I am MBA student, and I am a PG strat with ARC team, and I'll be emceeing the question answer session today. So our first question for today is how to manage people and their varying attitudes to work effectively.
There's no, it's just a question of learning to handle people, and because you're handling people at every level, from from top businessmen who will come in Mercedes cars to people who don't have even a means of transport, you are meeting all of them. So we learn a lot, and I remember once one of the politicians from Kerala, I know many of you may know, was Mrs. Gauriamma, who died recently from the CPM. She once told me, she said, all politicians listen through the years. They don't read files. What? Because they are all the time listening to people who come with representations in their constituency and so on. So they listen. So if you want to tell me something, tell me in my ear. Don't say you've written it in the file, because if you write something in a file, it doesn't enter my heart or my mind so much as by telling me in my ear. So you learn. Politicians are one of the best, readers of character. They make you out. I have great admiration for politicians. They can make you out in a second what type of person you are. How much are you willing? Are you willing to compromise? Are you willing? Are you honest? Do you stand on principles and so on? So this is something which we all learn by through experience of how to manage.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So the next question is, what are the risks associated with leadership as yours? What motivates you to take those risks, and how do you handle it?
Risks are most common risk is transfers. Second, of course, is suspensions. And then, of course, disciplinary action and so on. Which is why I said you need that little element of luck, which to an extent I've had, in spite of getting into this huge controversy with the Chief Justice of India and so on. I was able to get out of it. Otherwise, I would never have become a Secretary to Government of India. I would have possibly retired as a Joint Secretary or been sent home. So the risk for officers are basically transfers, suspension, and then disciplinary action. It is something which I've only faced disciplinary action literally once, and that too not from a politician, from one of my senior officers, on something which I felt, again, it's a question of, he felt I had violated some procedure, and I felt that I may have violated the procedure, but the end result was helping the people. And this is where I've always felt the politician understands me better than the senior officers. So when this show cause notice came, why disciplinary action should not be taken against me came, I actually had to, even though it's not, I didn't have to, but I found the chief minister actually had come to my district when I was collector at that time. And I told him, I have this problem. And I said, this is what I've done. And this is the function at which you've come where, my revised procedures, if you want to say it, have been followed. And look at the politician, it's the chief minister. He says, give me a minute. He gets down from the stage, walks among the people, comes back after 5 minutes, and then tells me, please send me a note to my office in the secretariat. And I send a note to him in the secretariat, and that's the last I heard of the disciplinary action, which means that the chief minister intervened and said, what he has done is correct. And it's a very funny thing. The steps on which I had taken action, on which I was being disciplined for, the department actually issued an order saying that this will be followed by all the other district collectors also. So I've always found a politician is easier to convince than senior officers. And it's a risk you have to take. It's part of the service. If you don't take risk, you don't take decisions, you're not a good officer.
So the next question is, how can undergrad students start preparing for UPSC exams? Any tips?
Yeah, of course. It's now changed slightly. When we were there, we just had one 8 subjects, and now you're having a preliminary and then the mains and so on. You have to, your general English, general knowledge, etc., are things which you have to learn. It's reading a newspaper, keeping yourself in general touch with general, events is good. But your key papers which you build are on your subjects which you are confident and which you like. And any subject that you like, you will find that you will do well in that. So you have to put in a lot of hard work because you're competing with lakhs of others, and only 100 people get selected into the IAS, and about 1.5 lakh people apply. So you are really, it's a competition. So you have to focus, and 6 months to a year is absolutely essential, where you have to forget about everything else and focus on the exam, and then the interview is there.
So the next question is, were your decisions influenced by the political leaders?
Mostly no, but you will find that, there is a, politicians will tell you to do some things also. And I always found that if there is something between what I used to call as, it's called the Unis Formula. It is, if 1920, if the politician says transfer X to Y place, and I find that there are 2 candidates who are both want to go to the Y place. If X and Y are both in the sense they equal, in the sense almost equal, minister's candidate is, and if I were to mark it, minister's candidate is 19, the other person's candidate is 20, no harm in giving the minister's candidate 19 to the post. But if I found that the other candidate was 20 and the minister's candidate at 15, then I would post the 20 and go back to the minister and say why I couldn't do this, etc. And this is again something which you learn, never to tell a minister to his face no. You will always say, I will look into this. As they say in Pakalam, I look into this. And then, because he doesn't like to be told no. He may tell you to do the most stupidest things or most outlandish things or most illegal things. But you don't tell him to his face no. You say, I will look into it and come back to you. I will study it and come back. And then if you study it and come back to him and then explain to him, I found that it's a way of, you can always explain the situation. And they know you. Ministers know what type of officer you are. Are you willing to be, used, or are you will you stand firm?
So the next question is, what made you choose the civil services, and how do you think, how can you identify whether it's a right career path for you or for anyone?
I think you must. I had partly, of course, in one sense, I'm the third generation in the civil services, but more than that, it was something which I was very passionate about. And it's, government is really required only by 10% of the population. It's just the lowest 10% who really needs government. The rest of the people, the above middle class, etc., we don't need government. We can manage without government. We've got our own network of things. It is that bottom 10% who really require government help. And that has been the focus. And when we were in the service, our course director, Mr. Yugandhar, was actually the father of Satya Nadella, who was a small kid when we were there in the academy. He always said, focus on that 10%. There will be people who will invite you to Lions Club, Rotary Club, all sorts of functions, etc. They don't need you. They just need your name and your prestige. But it's that 10% who have no access to government facilities, who are poor, who are illiterate, and so on. They are the ones. So if you focus on that 10%, I think you will succeed.
So the next question is, how to handle the pressure without worrying about the failures or the end results?
Well, you just handle it. You just do it. And I'm always willing to. What is your biggest fear? Is getting transferred. I'm always willing to say I'm willing to be transferred. And my wife was also in the service. She was also said. We said we'll stand firm. In fact, she's had a slightly more tougher service. She had more trouble with her political bosses than I did. But we stuck to it, and if she got transferred out, she got transferred out. You take it wherever you go. Never ask for a transfer. In our lives, both of us had never asked for any posting. We said we'll go anywhere we are posted, we'll go. And then the politician loses his great his strength over you to make you do things, because you say, sorry, this is my stand, I take it. You overrule me, you want to transfer me, I'm willing to go. So I don't have any vested interest in that particular post, and therefore that is very, very critical. You should be willing to go anywhere. If you're transferred, you're transferred.
So this is very interesting question. So your best memories of IITM or IITM friends, if any?
My best memories were, I think, I was in Mandakini hostel, and I think when the first year, when the big cultural extravaganza which you have once a year, we came, I think, last, and the next year we came first, and I was the master of ceremony. So I still remember that as one of my great achievements, organizing this whole cultural festival in Mandakini and doing well at in the.
I'm also a Mandakini person, so Mandakini always does well,
So it was a great get together with everybody, working in all the skits and the plays and the drama and everything together. So it was a great experience.
So the next question is, how did you efficiently manage your time while in such high-ranking positions? As you rise in every post, you have to realize what the role changes. When I become a secretary to government, my job is not to worry about all the details. The details will be handled by the joint secretaries and so on. So my what I used to call, if I would look at it as Home Secretary, my work is boundary management.
home with Prime Minister's office, home with the Home Minister, home with finance, and so on. So you manage your time by making sure that what we call as important and urgent, focus on the important items, the urgent will take care of itself on its own. So that is something very, very critical. Write down, I used to make a practice, even though you didn't work all the time, much before in the early morning, I'd work out and say, these 10 things I'm going to do in the office today. That's my priority. And then irrespective of this thing, I try to focus and make sure that I finish those 10 items. And if anything if I did 6 out of the 10 or 7 out of the 10, the 3 would go over the next day. That's how you focus on.
Okay. So the next question is, have you come across a Dharma Sankat and how did you handle it? If yes.
No, I didn't get that question.
So have you come across a Dharma Sankat and how did you handle it? If yes.
No, I didn't. What?
Dharma Sangat, I think a predicament, I think she was referring. Have you come across any of them and how did you, moral dilemma and have you resolved it?
See, you sometimes can take decisions which are, which may not be correct. And I have found, at least it's been my experience, that any time I took a decision which, I mean, not out of any vested interest, but maybe in my understanding of the situation, I would always find that if I took a wrong decision, I would not be able to sleep at night. So any time I took a wrong decision, I knew that by night time I would know that decision is not the correct decision. And the moment I got a sleepless night over that decision, I would review that decision the next day. And that is, I think, in one sense, you want to call it conscience. I want to call it. It's something which you have to do. And sometimes under pressure of things, you might take a decision, but it'll come back. I think it's a sixth sense which will tell you that you might have taken this decision, but it's not right, and then you correct it.
So the next question is, your tips for how to communicate our thoughts concisely and to the point. Any tips for this?
See, focus on what is the key essential. There are so many things, as I said. Focus on what is the key essential. What is it that you want to do? If you don't focus on that, you can waste time on a lot of things. What is it that? So in the district, as I said, if you're saying my focus is that 10%, then please spend 50% of your time on that 10% and spend 50% on the time with the 90%. So you will find it's quite easy once over a period of time. And it's, just to give you an example, when I was collector, I used to, hundreds of people come every day. Everybody poor, etc., and they'll come saying that we got problem. Some issue, they've got a problem. And if I found that the issue was something which had not been rectified for some time, I would actually open my diary and I would write it down. So I had it. There were 6 taluks, so I had 6 pages, and I would write down that name of the person and if there's a file number. The advantage was that when I went to that field visit, I would always ask the local officer, I said, what happened to this case? Why is not? So the follow-up is very important. If the follow-up takes place, things would get. And it became so much so that sometimes by accident, somebody would come give me a petition and they'd go away. And then they'll come to the door, they'll wait. So I said, what happened? Sir, you haven't put it in your diary. This poor person has been told by the peon standing outside that if you want something to be really done, make sure the collector enters it in his diary. If the collector enters it in his diary, your problem will be solved. So that is how everybody, we don't realize that everybody keeps a watch on what you're doing, how much time you're spending, where do you spend. Do you spend time, socializing with the rich people, or you spend time focusing on? It's a matter, like even today, I don't have a single share in any company. It's a conscious decision taken because I was commerce secretary, I was in industries and so on. So I said, any decision which I take would have some impact. Therefore, I said, I won't buy shares. I've taken that. Even post-retirement, I've taken that decision. So that gives me the freedom to take others. I'm not worried that if I take some decision, okay, this will help. With any decision that I take as commerce secretary, it might help one company or the other. And if I have shares in that company, then I shouldn't take a decision thinking that, okay, that will help my company, it will increase the value of my shares. So it's a conscious decision. It's a choice that you take.
I have a question also, sir. Actually, if you look at the careers, the postings of IAS officers, obviously the first one is the district magistrate, the collector, and all of that, which are front-facing, more public-facing. And then you have this additional secretary, joint secretary, all of that, which is more also about policy formulations and like actually changing the fundamentals of various industries in terms of the contours and things like that. What would be and how did you appreciate you have managed both of them? Or what are the differences in the challenges, and how do you rate them in terms of?
Challenges. I mean, see, you are not responsible for the postings that you get. So luckily, I've got special officer for cashew industry. I looked at the workers of cashew industry. In fact, that was where, in one sense, my reputation actually won, which I mentioned earlier. The reputation and the luck comes from some other. The reputation came because during the emergency, and I can give you this example. In the cashew industry, many people were not even paid the minimum wages. Most of them are illiterate workers, ladies. 99% of the cashew workers are ladies. They just put a thumb impression and say that you're being paid, whatever, 150 rupees, and they'll give them 60 rupees. But they'll made them sign for 150. So, taking advantage of that time, both emergency as well as the fact that I was sub-collector and the special officer for cashew industry, I realized that it's impossible for me to, there's 125,000 workers, it's not possible for me to do it. But I said that I started realizing after going to any one place, I said, go to one place and I pick up, and I found that thumb impressions are being taken, and I would see the worker, and the worker said, how much you got? 60 rupees. I said, but you're 150. Moment I saw one case like this, I would pick up the manager of the cashew factory and take him to the police station and tell the sub-inspector of police station, keep him here till you hear from me. Now this manager is the very close confidant of the cashew Modlali there. He does all his tricks, he does all his double accounting, double bookkeeping, all this, everything. So he can't afford to have this fellow in the jail. So quickly they send word saying that, no, pay full wages. So moment when one factory, it came that wages, full wages are being paid. So it's a sudden double income for the people. The pressure came on me saying that, please come to my factory on the day of when the wages are given, because they knew that if I came there, they would get their full wages. So I had to, work a system by which, send different people to different people and tell them that if you're not getting this, pick him up. It's something illegal action. I mean, today you might say, it's illegal action by taking somebody without a charge sheet, putting him in the police station and say, hold him for something. But the larger purpose was enforcing minimum wages. And he was not beaten up in the police station. He was just kept there. But the very fact that, he's the agent of the cashew magnate, and he's in the police station and everybody's coming, he's well known in the area. And people would come to the police station and say, what are you doing? And so on. His status and his reputation and his embarrassment made me. So I was able to actually in 76, 77 and 78 get minimum wages paid in the cashew workers. Therefore, your reputation builds up, and that reputation helps you, in other fields.
So now I'll ask the last question for this session. So the question is, what's the most gratifying experience you have had as a civil servant?
I don't think you could say. I'm very, there's no one most gratifying because there's so many incidents across the field. I can just, if you know, and that's why she said, I spent as Joint Secretary Northeast. I've traveled in the Northeast very extensively, including the most remotest areas and so on. And I'm just giving you an example of how sitting in Delhi, how you can help people in, say, remotest Mon district of Nagaland. When we went there, I took officers from there, and they said, none of our teachers in the school, there are no teachers. And the education deputy secretary was with me. He said, it cannot be because I'm paying the wages for 130 teachers in Mon district every month to the state government. So we actually found that the people were selected as teachers for Mon district, but posted in more, not in remote areas, they get posted in state capitals and so on. So nobody was getting posted there. And we were able to bring this to the notice of the chief minister. Of course, he knew about it because, he without his orders, these posts couldn't get transferred. But they were able to create 130 supernumerary posts. 130 local graduates of Mon district got appointed as what we call as supernumerary teachers. And I thought at that stage, for me, it was very satisfying because I said, here is people who are in most remote areas. They are seeing government function. This is the way a government should function. To solve a problem at the local level, at the most remote area. And that is where you get greater satisfaction you get when you solve. And this is the sort of thing which happens across, whether it's in Kerala or whether it's in the Northeast and so on. These small things are the ones that give you the greatest satisfaction because people, I can still go to Mon today and they will still remember me 20 years because some of the graduates there who got appointed in 96, they might have become now principals of the school and so on. So they'll still be there, but everybody remembers. So that is where I think.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir, for your time spent with the students. I think, as we mentioned previously, also the number of people opting for civil services from IIT Madras perhaps should be higher than what it is currently. Right? I think the opportunities for creating a social impact is so much. It's immense, and as it was quite evident from the anecdotes that you mentioned, also. So let's hope that we will have more candidates, more students from our institute and our campus, opting for civil services as a career option. So look forward to that also. And thank you again for your time.
Yeah, it's the best career option in India today. I can tell you that. So anybody who's willing to join the service, I think it's a tremendous service, a great amount of good that you can do, and at all levels. So I would recommend you to join. It's something which you will really feel satisfied at the end. It's a great experience.
Absolutely. Thank you for your guidance and your advice on that. We look forward to staying in touch with you and hope to meet you in the campus sometime once the pandemic goes away and once you start traveling. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a great evening, whatever is left of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anushri, I couldn't talk anything about left-wing extremism, which is from your area, but some other time.
Yes, sure.
That is another story. For those of you who are interested, you should read my podcast in the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, both on left-wing extremism and on the Naga and Manipur issue. It's each one of them is 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours. So each one of these incidents which I put and done in 2-3 minutes it doesn't do justice to the subject as such. But it's there. It's on the webcast. It's there. I'll give you an idea of the issues and what can be done.
Sure, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
so
much.
Thank you.
Have a pleasant evening.